link us in the comments.
Link the live all starters.
Link the link to our live video. Yeah.
How do I find the link to our live video or on YouTube?
Yeah, just Google live all starters. Okay, we are live following the Portland Trailblazers getting a huge Game 1 win tonight over the Denver Nuggets. Again, Game 1, 123-109. Portland steals home court advantage away from the Nuggets, gets that game they needed to on the road. Now to advance in this series, Portland's just going to need to hold serve at home. That'll help, obviously, if they can get a win in Game 2, but a lot of big performances across the board tonight from Portland. A lot of keys that we've talked about in our regular podcast kind of held true today. I'll just start off. Obviously, Dame was the star today, 34 big points, 9 of 9 from the free throw line, 10 of 25 from the field, 13 assists. He was a plus 25 in the game. But how about Jusuf Nurkic? That was so great to see in a game where he got Jokic's best punch, at least scoring. And he responded by going 7 of 10 from the field, 16 points, 12 rebounds, 5 assists. And he checks Jokic for most of the game. Jokic scored 34 points, but only had 1 assist, which was huge. Lillard's obviously the star player, but I really think I want to give the MVP of this game to Jusuf Nurkic.
Yeah, big performance by him on both sides of the ball. They Denver really couldn't guard the pick and roll very well because they really needed to double Dame off the pick and roll, but Nurkic right out of there could make a play out of there because with the help defense, he would make the right pass, or if they didn't help, he'd get a wide open layup.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously in the first half, especially huge performance from Carmelo Anthony. He's another guy we talked about being really important in this series. And he scores those 15 points in the first half, and he cooled down a little bit in the second half, but he got that really big and one off the nice pass from Nurk. And then Anthony Simons was just awesome, going 5 of 6 from the field, 4 of 5 from 3, knocking down his shots, scoring 14, and he was able to outscore a guy that the one guy we didn't really cover at all in our preview, and ended up getting big minutes for Denver. Marcus Howard, the rookie, scored a solid 7 points for the Nuggets, but Simons was able to double him off the bench, which turned out to be really big. Monty Morris, tried to call him Markieff Morris there for a second. Monty Morris got 10, but he's the only player off the bench in double figures for the Nuggets, whereas Carmelo and Simons combined for 32, which was really great to see from Portland's bench.
Yeah, in Portland, their role players play better, and so that really gave them the boost. Both Jokic and Lillard had big games, but Portland's supporting cast appeared to be better than Denver. I think going forward, Aaron Gordon's going to be huge in this series. If he's able to score 20 points a game, then they win. But I mean, it's tough. Like, this performance by Portland looks pretty repeatable, just with how many weapons we have. Yes. So I mean, Denver's going to have to make some adjustments from here because, I mean, you could see. I mean, it doesn't feel like Portland went in there and played out of their potential. It feels like they just went in there, played their game, and then won a game. This feels very repeatable. So it's going to be interesting to see how Denver comes out in game 2 because they're really going to need to change their defensive scheme because, I mean, it was not working. Portland really was able to get pretty much anything they wanted.
Yeah, I think for Denver to win this series, they're going to need 4 games of their role players outside of Porter Jr. and Jokic really stepping up big, which I think, to your point, talking about Aaron Gordon there, I actually thought Aaron Gordon played pretty solidly, especially in the first half when Portland was struggling to rebound, which is another key we talked about in an earlier preview. But I mean, Morris played well off the bench, and he kind of helped him. He was a pretty when Denver went on some of their runs when Lillard was out. Morris was kind of a catalyst of that. Um, but I mean, and Campazzo, I mean, he went 3 of 4 from the field, but he only got 4 shots. Austin Rivers didn't shoot well. Um, it seems like Denver just didn't seem to move the ball well. I mean, Jokic obviously with only 1 assist. I would expect the adjustment from Denver to be more ball movement, and we'll see if Portland's defense can recover.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting point made by Vince Carter late in the game that, I mean, they're running an 8-man rotation right now, and outside of Nurkic and Simons, all of them have played in at least the conference finals.
Yeah.
So they're playing in rotation with a ton of experience, which, I mean, it obviously showed today, and that could be the difference in the series, just how much experience Portland has versus Denver, just with their 8-man rotation.
Absolutely. And what was really encouraging, I mean, Anthony Simons is probably not going to go 4 or 5 from 3 every game just because he's a young player. But 50% shooting or roughly around there is maintainable for Carmelo. 10 of 25 from Dame. I mean, that's not even as efficient as he can be. And he still scored 34 points and had 13 assists. Covington going 3 of 5 was he probably won't be quite that offensively efficient in every game, but he can be close to that. And Powell was only 3 of 11. McCollum was 8 of 20, and Cantor was basically a non-factor in this game.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really encouraging sign that Portland was. So of their 8 players, 4 offensively were phenomenal. That being Lillard, Nurkic, Anthony, and Simons. 1 being very good, that being CJ. I would say CJ was very good, not amazing on offense today. And he always has one of those games, if not multiple in the playoffs, where he just gets cooking. I really think the key to this game was Jokic only having 1 assist, because we saw the shots he was making, and he's the MVP. Some shots you just throw up your hands and you're like, you know what? He's a great, great player, but players were not hitting shots off his passes, and I actually thought Portland's defense on him was all right. Cantor got toasted by him there in the second quarter. He was working 100%. Cantor a little. 100%. He was working Cantor a little bit down there, but other than that, I really think the strategy to just not let Jokic get those 15 assists, he only had the 1 assist, was a huge key to Portland's victory. And you look at the final score, we talked about Portland wins any game that Denver does not score 110. Denver only scored 109.
100%.
So it's definitely an encouraging start to this series, and one that makes you think that it's Portland's to lose, especially now that they've gotten a road game.
Absolutely. And I think what it appears Portland's game plan is they're making Jokic have to beat them by himself relatively, which is exactly what they should be doing. Because Jokic 1v5 is not going to beat Portland. Portland has enough talent to beat him, even though he is the MVP. And, I mean, even though it's arguable with Dame on the court, also probably the best player on the court, I mean, Portland just has more talent on the court at all times with their 8-man rotation right now. So it's going to be interesting to see what Denver does to adjust to see how Jokic can dominate the game more passing the ball. Because, I mean, like, obviously – he's not going to have 1 assist every game. So they're going to have to find a way to get him to dominate in the passing game because, I mean, other than that, I mean, Portland's defense on him, it seems very sustainable, and it seems like Portland really is just going out there and playing their game.
Yeah, totally. And I think credit where credit's due, you can still complain about Stotts all you want. I was pleasantly surprised at Stotts' willingness to leave Anthony Simons in the game as late as he did.
Yeah.
A lot of times I think he would have pulled Simons, even with him making shots, he would have pulled Simons with about 8 minutes left and put Powell back in, but he knew Powell wasn't shooting as well as he can. Powell actually didn't have a great game, to be honest. He just really didn't.
Yeah.
And that'll change, of course. He's a veteran player who has playoff experience, but Stotts was willing to put Simons back in until it was time to just shut the door defensively, um, which I think was awesome. And he left the hot hand in there with Carmelo. And then when it was time, he put Covington back in, knowing Covington was going to play efficiently. And Covington actually played pretty solid defense. He wasn't perfect defensively. There were some times where he allowed a guy like Gordon to seal him. I remember that play where Campazzo had the nice pass and Covington
Yeah.
didn't have good defensive position. There were some times where Covington and Powell weren't crashing the boards like they needed to when Nurkic got drawn away from the hoop. But those are fixable knick-knack things, and Portland got a win. And no team's going to play perfect, especially a team that's not perfect like Portland. But I agree that this seemed very sustainable. Now, Portland did shoot practically 50% from three, which is probably not sustainable. So, say game two rolls around and Jokic is passing and his teammates are hitting shots and Portland's shooting, 30% from three. How can Portland still get a win when they're not shooting as hot and Jokic is getting his teammates more involved?
Yeah, I think it goes back to, I mean, Portland's going to run the pick and roll. That's how they run most of their offense. It's all going to be on how Denver plays it. If Nurkic continues to make the right decision, whether it be to get to the bucket or to find someone open in the corner, whether it be Powell, Covington, Carmelo, Anthony, CJ, they're gonna keep running that until Denver's able to figure out how to stop it, because so far it appears Dame's going to get a good look at three, or Nurkic is going to be able to make a play, and that's pretty much what's going to happen. So it's going to be interesting to see how Denver adjusts from it, because they're going to need to find a way to stop that. Otherwise, it's not going to be a particularly long series.
No, absolutely not. And I think we called him the MVP at the beginning of this live stream. I still think Nurkic is so key in this series.
Yeah.
He's so important. And I almost wonder if you see Denver switch to a defensive strategy. It's not the same as Jokic because Jokic isn't as clutch as Dame is. But if there's a little bit of that, okay, we're going to let Dame get his. And then in the fourth quarter, we're just going to trap him once other players have not gotten their rhythm in the game yet. I wonder if that's Denver's strategy is, you know what? If Dame scores 40 through three quarters, and then we just trap him at half court and CJ and Powell aren't in a rhythm yet, maybe that's their strategy. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, because we also saw tonight that Denver does not have a rim protector. Their blocks came on athletic, solid plays from Porter Jr. and Gordon, who are really athletic players, but they're not true rim protectors. Denver does not have a big guy underneath that can protect the rim, and Portland does in Nurkic, which just compounds Nurkic's importance all the more.
100%. He needs to continue to play well, and he needs to not get into foul trouble. I think that's where games can go right extremely quickly, is when Nurkic gets into foul trouble, and they're going to have to throw Cantor in there, or they have to throw a smaller body in Covington or Hollis Jefferson in on Jokic. That's where Jokic creates a lot more problems, is when he's in on a smaller guy with no big in there at all.
Yeah, I do hope. I was encouraged slightly by there was one, again, we go back to it. Cantor kind of got toasted defensively tonight.
Yeah, that was not good.
But there was one play where he forced Jokic off his spot and forced a tough fadeaway two that Jokic missed. If we can get that a little more consistently from Cantor, that only makes it tougher for Denver, because you have the reliable defense of Nurkic and just solid defense from Cantor. And if you can force Jokic into taking even tougher shots and he's not shooting as efficiently as he did tonight while still not facilitating as much, I mean, Portland wins that game.
100%. I think Denver, I think tonight really shows how much Denver is missing Jamal Murray. This might have been the first game in a long time since he got hurt that they really showed that. They didn't seem to have quite that punch Portland really didn't have to respect anything from the backcourt,
Right.
from Austin Rivers and Campazzo. So, I mean, unless one of them can really get it going, Portland can really not. They can really key in on the dudes that can go and get theirs, being Porter Jr. and Jokic. So I mean, they're going to need something from the others to really get into it, because otherwise, Portland has too many dudes that can go and get their own. Denver, I don't think Denver can keep pace. I don't think they're a good enough team defensively to just shut down Portland.
I agree. And Porter Jr. was 1 of 10 from three,
Yeah.
which is a really big, because Porter Jr. has to basically be a star for Denver to win this series. And he scored 25 points. And he was, what was he? He was like, I don't think, did he? He didn't miss a shot from 2-point range. No, I'm looking at the box score and I'm doing the math. He did not miss a shot. He was 11 for 11 from 2-point range.
Dang. Probably all at the rim, to be honest.
Yeah, and he had a couple of mid-ranges there in the fourth quarter when Denver went on a mini spurt before Dame came back in and they shut the door. But great. Some of Michael Porter's shots were bad shots. They just were. He took some bad shots in this game.
Oh, yeah, 100%. The one in the fast break with about like 3 minutes left.
He had a layup. He had a layup, and he got a little excited there.
Yeah.
He won't shoot that poorly every game. 1 of 10's a pretty abysmal number, but for Portland's sake, you kind of hope that his youth still shows a little bit and that he's not quite a star yet. Because if he's not quite a star yet, Portland wins the series, just to be frank. Unless someone comes completely out of nowhere, like suddenly Aaron Gordon's just incredible, or someone like a Campazzo or a Monte Morris just really blossoms, which you just don't expect that, especially with Portland's veteran leadership knowing how to counterpunch that.
Portland has enough very good players to beat one star. It's where it's two, it's where it gets kind of dicey, but yeah, I mean, if Denver doesn't have that second guy that can really go out there and lead the team alongside of Jokic, then I mean, you got to think Portland's going to win the series. They have a couple of guys, Dame and CJ, that really can go out there as leaders and lead the team. And basically, one of them's on the court at all times, so they always have that guy out there setting the tone. Whereas when Denver takes Jokic off the court, it's kind of more of a free for all, more of a it can get dicey quicker. So it's gonna be interesting to see what Denver's adjustments are.
Yeah, it will be, and it'll be interesting to see how Portland responds to those, and what players step up as a result. Because today, the player that was challenged to step up, based off Denver's defensive game plan, was Nurkic, and Nurkic came through huge.
100%.
So, in the next game, does it become Norman Powell? Does it become Covington? Do they pick their poison with CJ McCollum? CJ actually got some decent shots in this game, and he still went 8 for 20, which is a really solid game. But he didn't seem like it was kind of a quiet 21 that he scored, it felt like.
Yeah.
And you would expect 1 or 2 games at least in this series versus it was actually funny at Jalen Rose at halftime. He predicted Portland to win the game. He said, Porter Jr. is going to come out hot, but Portland's going to win this game, and I'm going to get 20 from CJ McCollum in the second half. Obviously, that didn't happen. It ended up being a Lillard and Nurkic and Anthony Simons.
Yep.
But that game from CJ is coming. He's
100%.
It's coming. I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to say that happens game 3 is when that happens. That's just my guess. But
yeah, it feels like it would be a game in Portland. I mean, it's very encouraging after this game. Portland flat out, just basing off tonight's performance, they look like the better team. I mean, just by the eye test, they look better than Denver. Denver looks like they're missing Jamal Murray. They might be able to adjust. I mean, we'll see what Mike Malone can cook up. But, I mean, Portland just overall, their experience, I mean, it shows. They are extremely comfortable out there, and they look like they're playing a regular season game out there. Which, I mean, I don't know if it has to do with the matchup or what, but I mean, they look extremely comfortable up there, which is not a good sign for Denver.
It's not. I know both you and I. Kendall predicted Portland in 6, and I both know both you and I predicted Portland in 7.
Yeah,
I think I'm leaning 6 now. I still don't see a sweep, and winning a game 5 on the road. Um, I know that home court's not necessarily there, but I don't know about that. So I think I would say, to be safe, I'd take Portland in 6 right now.
100%. I think I do too. But I mean, you never know. But I mean, it just feels like it would take quite a lot from Denver to win this series. To win 4 of the next 6. It just, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
it feels like it would take a lot from Jokic. I mean, maybe he has it in him, but I mean, you gotta like where
Yeah.
Portland is sitting at the moment.
Yeah, Denver has to win 3 of the next 5, including one in Portland, and
Yeah,
then beat Dame CJ and Carmelo in a game 7. That it's
it's
just
tough.
it's so tricky when you're such a diehard Portland fan. You just are trained to think like, doomsday scenario, which doomsday scenario at this point is probably injuries.
100%. 100%.
Because if you just take a step back and look at it, you're just like, yeah, Jokic is so good. Is he gonna beat all 3 of those veterans in a game 7? If it even gets to that point, you just don't see it.
Yeah, I know. Melo is such a big player, specifically for these moments for the playoffs, because he does
Yes.
become that pseudo third star. Even though he's obviously not what he once was, he still brings that mentality. He still knows what it's like. And I mean, he's still an incredibly skilled player. You watch him work out there on offense, and it's absolutely beautiful to watch. Like he is crazy out there. Um, so he brings a ton off the bench, especially when he's playing those guys on the second unit. I mean, he is quicker than JaMychal Green. He can beat JaMychal
Yeah.
Green. Uh, and he has the matchups, whether it be a wing, he's bigger than, he can post up, and he's so good in the post. Or it be a big, he's quicker than still. He's going to be very pivotal. If he has games where he just has like 4 points or like 2 points, then I mean, you got to think Denver wins those games. But if he continues that 15 to 20 points a game, I mean, you got to think Portland wins all of those games.
Yeah, absolutely. And what were Denver fans thinking booing him? That
Oh, I
was
know.
why
Give
would
him motivation. Oh my gosh.
why would you boo a Hall of Famer? He already wants to come into the place where he started and win a playoff series. Like, why would you give him the extra? Like, oh yeah, also we hate you.
Yeah,
Like,
what are you doing? And why would they hate him? Like he had such a good career there. I mean, I guess he won out in the end, but like, I don't
can you
know.
blame him?
Like, yeah. I
It's
mean,
the
they
same
did
deal
all
as
they
like
could.
it would be absolutely heartbreaking if one day Dame asked for a trade, but ultimately, would you blame him completely? Like,
I mean,
no.
no, like I get it. Like you gotta respect the dude. Like you want what's best for him. And if it's somewhere else, it's unfortunate. But I mean, they did get a pretty good call from him, and they made the playoffs. I think not the next year, but the year
Yeah.
after. So they've been in a good situation post Carmelo Anthony too. So it was kind of weird to see them booth him. But yeah, like that was very odd. I mean, don't give the man more
That's bad.
motivation.
No kidding. Well, to kind of wrap up this live stream, if you're tuning in, thanks so much for tuning in. If you tuned in at any point during this, we will be doing live reactions. 2 of the 3 of us. I think game 2 is going to be myself and Kendall. John and Kendall will be with y'all for game 3, and we'll just do it all from there. Every playoff game that Portland plays throughout this year, throughout this series, and hopefully beyond. You can follow us on Spotify and YouTube at YBall Starters, and we're also on social media. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, also at YBall Starters. To kind of wrap it up, John, do you have a prediction for game 2?
Oof. I think Denver comes out attacking. I think they come out hot because I think they know that if Portland comes out and wins game 2, that their season is in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
So I think Denver is going to come out and be extremely aggressive in game 2. And I think they're going to pull a pretty big adjustment just because I mean, it just shows with their original game plan coming in this series, that's not going to work. Portland didn't do anything fancy. They didn't do anything extraordinary, and they came out with a relatively comfortable win in game one. That's not a good sign. So I think we're going to see a relatively big adjustment from Michael Malone. Oof, jeez.
Yeah, he catch answer that one.
He did. That was kind of odd. Not gonna lie. Yeah. But I think we're gonna see a relatively big adjustment. I'm not entirely sure what it's gonna be, but I think Denver's gonna come out pretty hot. So it's gonna be interesting to see what happens in game two.
I think it's a must win for Denver. It's a little different this year with COVID and not having fans. Portland's not going to have their insane home court advantage that they usually have during the playoffs, but spot a veteran team a 2-0 lead. It's usually not good news for a team. And you forget that Denver's still a young team relatively, especially without, Murray's still a young player and they don't have Barton. It's another guy we didn't bring up. We don't know when he's going to be here in this playoffs. That's going to be big.
It really depends when he's able to get back.
But we'll see. Game 2 is Monday night, I believe, at 7.
It might be 6 because it's Denver, but it is 7. Monday at 7. Yep.
Monday at 7. So tune in on TNT, and then after the game, make sure you all tune in to our YouTube channel at Wide Ball Starters, this same channel. Subscribe. We'll also be having new podcast episodes coming out soon. And tune in after every Blazers playoff game to get the reaction, win or lose. Thanks everyone to tune in. Thanks to everyone who tuned in, excuse me. And have a great night.